As a matter of interest, Betrayed is merely the most recent of a number of Hollywood pictures dealing with racism, which lately seems to have replaced the Vietnam War as the bandwagon upon which serious filmmakers feel obliged to clamber. The standard bearer among these movies is, I suppose, Alan Parker's Mississippi Burning, which opens here soon, but there'll be quite a few others coming along in its wake. So, in New York, Tom Brook has been casting around to find out why racism, prejudice and the civil rights conflicts of the 1960s have now become such popular cinema subjects.
In Alienation, thousands of aliens land in Los Angeles. They look different and have second-class status. Their plight is a metaphor for contemporary racism. Betrayed deals with the real world and the virulent racial hatred of the Ku Klux Klan. The recent film, Five Corners, shows how the civil rights struggles of black Americans in the 1960s had an impact on a group of New York teenagers at the time. Hairspray, another picture set in the 1960s, also touches on racial issues when a group of young people protest against a segregated television show. The most controversial Hollywood examination of the civil rights period to date has been Mississippi Burning, a fictionalized account of the investigation into the murder of 3 civil rights workers in the Deep South in 1964. In fact, there are a number of other Hollywood films in the pipeline set in the 1960s which touch on civil rights issues. Something of a trend is developing. Of course, the idea of a trend isn't exactly new in Hollywood. Back in 1977, Saturday Night Fever spawned a whole batch of dance movies. Other Hollywood trends have included disaster films, and more recently there have been several movies about babies. Baseball has been a popular theme too. One of the more significant trends has been films about the Vietnam War, which began to emerge 2 or 3 years ago with pictures like Platoon. Willem Dafoe starred in both Platoon and Mississippi Burning.
Slowly there's a kind of looking back, what's it called, retrospection, about the 60s, a time where I'm sure no one would argue that a lot of change happened, and you have to get a little ways from the flashpoint before you can examine those things. And now I think the general public is far enough away from that time that they're interested in it again.
Oh, the times they are changing.
The social upheavals of the 1960s had a profound impact on many of those who'd been making these new films set in the civil rights period.
It was a very important time to be an American. It's a very important time for us to come from. And it's well, you know, I was born in '62, so it's sort of my roots, my brother's roots, why my brother might be the way he is, or, you know, whatever.
I think that what's happening with these civil rights movies is that they're being written by, produced by, and released by studios who are headed by people who were very involved in the civil rights movement in the 60s. I think that the baby boom has now come of age.
James Chaney was one of 3 civil rights workers whose murder by the Ku Klux Klan in 1964 was so vividly depicted in Mississippi Burning. James Chaney's brother, Ben, says there is perhaps another reason for Hollywood's current preoccupation with civil rights and racism.
People were beginning to feel that racism was dead, was gone. But in the last few years, there's been a serious resurgence of racism. I think Hollywood feels now is the opportunity to talk about history 25 years ago.
But are the big Hollywood studios seizing this opportunity because their social conscience has been awakened, or are they doing it to make money?
I think big box office is always #1. If they can also do a movie that they feel good about, I think that makes them happy. But I think the most important thing is box office.
I think most black Americans are concerned about the way Hollywood is looking at the civil rights era. It's desirable to have movies made about the movement. It's desirable to have that history told, but from whose perspective?
Indeed, many feel that Mississippi Burning, although a fictionalized account, distorted the truth, that it played down the role of black Americans in the civil rights movement, that it had only white heroes. Eric Plesko at Orion Pictures, which produced the film, doesn't agree.
There are many heroic black characters in this film. If you want to see them, they're all there. There's a young man who is an informant for the FBI people, albeit he has a paper bag over his head, but still very dangerous business.
Do you think, though, that there is a problem when Hollywood does deal with an issue like the Civil Rights era in portraying it accurately, because there are so few black executives or directors in Hollywood?
I would think that it's totally unrelated. That is the platform for all the conversation. We've had black executives. We have black executives in our company. We don't need to be black, in my view, to not offend the blacks.
But many black Americans remain pessimistic over the likelihood of Hollywood portraying their history honestly and fairly.
The need is for the truth to be told and to expose the truth and give out people an opportunity who don't remember, who don't know what took place, an opportunity to find out what really happened. There's a need for more movies. I hope that more movies are made, but only they tell the truth.
Telling the truth, or historical accuracy, has never been a Hollywood priority. Producing entertainment which makes money is the order of the day. Mississippi Burning has so far grossed almost £20 million at the box office. If the film continues to do well, then this trend of Hollywood films which explore racism and the civil rights era could continue for quite some time.
Yes, well, there never was much percentage in telling the truth. Ask some of our tabloid newspapers.